So, hello then, welcome back to another Night of the Movies podcast. I'm Spike Knight, and in these podcasts I like talking all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I'm reviewing Love Lies Bleeding. So, let's get into it, shall we? Love Lies Bleeding is this new film directed by Rose Glass, who previously directed Saint Maud, which came out in 2019, and I didn't love Saint Maud, and I wanted to love Saint Maud, but I admired what it was going for, and I thought it was a very interesting horror movie, very unusual. And I was interested in this movie because it's her follow-up to Saint Maud. Well, it's not a sequel to Saint Maud by any means, but it's the first film she's made since Saint Maud, so I wanted to see what her next directional effort was going to be like. Plus, I was interested in this movie because of the cast. Like, you got Kristen Stewart in here, you've got Casey O'Brien, you've got Dave Franco and Ed Harris in supporting roles. And even so, I'm not a huge fan of 3/4 of those actors that I've just mentioned. Like, I really like Ed Harris in everything I've seen him in, but I'm not the biggest fan of Kristen Stewart, nor am I the biggest fan of Casey O'Brien, nor am I really the biggest fan of Dave Franco. But I liked the way they looked in this film, because I kept seeing the trailers for this film when I went to the cinema recently, and whenever I see the trailer, I was like, yeah, these actors they just don't work for me when I see them in a film usually, but in the trailers alone, their performances are working for me. So I was interested in the film because the cast looked great in it, plus the trailers worked for me. The trailers really worked for me and made this film look like it was going to be sort of a dark take on the Thelma and Louise sort of story, you know what I mean? So I wanted to see this film at the cinema, and that's exactly what I did yesterday. And the Google plot synopsis of the film goes as follows. Lou, played by Kristen Stewart in this film, is a reclusive gym manager who falls hard for Jackie, played by Casey O'Brien in the film, an ambitious bodybuilder who's heading to Las Vegas to pursue her dream. Their love soon leads to violence as they get pulled deep into the web of Lou's criminal family. And here's the thing with this film. Here's the thing with Love Lies Bleeding. I like this film. I was entertained by it when I was watching it in the cinema, but I left feeling nonplussed. I left feeling like it was a worthwhile watch, and I was happy I saw it. But I was also perplexed. I was like, I'm not really sure what that film was trying to accomplish, nor am I sure if the second half of the film really worked for me. And there's some decisions in the finale of the film which were a little too surreal and ambitious for my liking. There are things that I definitely admire about this film. It's a beautifully made movie. I love the way this film looks because it's got this lurid look to it, where everything's colourful, but you don't like how colourful everything is because the actual themes in the film and the storylines aren't so colourful. They don't match the way it looks, but that also made the film, that was something that I really liked about the movie. Plus, the performances were all excellent. This is probably the best I've seen Kristen Stewart. I mean, I need to give her more of a chance because she was really fantastic in Spence, which came out a couple of years ago now. And I haven't seen her in loads else, but this made me think, actually, you know, maybe I need to give Kristen Stewart more of a chance because I've not been a big fan of her in the past, but actually she's given a pretty damn good performance here. Casey O'Brien, who was one of the best parts in the last season of Mandalorian, was great here as well. Totally believed her as this bodybuilder, and I never felt like I was watching somebody who had been in a Star Wars TV show. You know, sometimes that can happen when an actor's been in your favourite franchise and you're watching them in something else. You can't differentiate between the two, but that didn't happen when I was watching her in this movie. Dave Franco doesn't have a huge role in this film, but he's got bad written all over him, and he plays into that very well. I really like Dave Franco's performance. He made me hate that character more than the writing did. I mean, the writing did make me dislike the character for sure, but his performance made me dislike him even more. And Ed Harris, he's brilliant. Sort of channeling his Man in Black performance from the Westworld TV series, which he played a very big role in, which he was very excellent in as well. Ed Harris, again, doesn't have a huge role similar to Dave Franco, but whenever he's on screen, you feel his presence. Ed Harris was terrific in the film. And I usually really like unusual movies, and I like some of the decisions made in this film. I like some of the creative decisions. The musical score, I think, by Clint Mansell worked in the film, and there were things I liked about it. I was entertained by it when I was watching. I wasn't sitting there thinking this film is terrible, but I was also sitting there thinking, it could be better. It almost feels like it's on the verge of being great, but it's not quite getting over that line into greatness. And I think the reason for me that it didn't go over that line is because I wanted the film to be more riveting and more emotionally engaging. I think the most engaging part of the film are the visuals. The way the film is shot and how the camera work and the directing itself, it's a very well directed movie by Rose Glass. I think the camera work and the direction itself tells its own story. But at the same time, I didn't feel as emotionally connected to what's going on as I wanted to. I didn't find the characters particularly... I'm not going to say I didn't find them likeable, because I did find them likeable, but I didn't find myself emotionally attached to any of these characters, and I wanted it to be more riveting. This film almost feels like it's part of a grander story, of a 3-act story that we would get over 3 movies. You know, it feels like Act 1 is something that's hinted at throughout the movie. Like, the film keeps telling us that Kristen Stewart's character, what's her character's name? Lou. That's what I said on the Google Plot synopsis. Yeah, we keep hearing that Lou had a dark past and she has some dark connections, and her father isn't particularly a nice man. We keep seeing hints at that, but if they fully explored that, I think it would have given the film a narrative thrust, something to actually make the film more suspenseful than it was for me. And it feels like if they explored that more, it would have been more of a satisfying watch, because this film, it mainly feels like it's the second act in a grander story, as I've already said. And by the end of the film, I was sat there going, okay, what's next? Because the ending wasn't that conclusive for me. It feels like almost there's going to be a sequel in the works, which I doubt there is. I don't know, maybe there is, because it's not unheard of for A24 to make sequels and prequels now. Look at the X trilogy that is currently being made by Ty West. That's all being produced by A24, as is this movie, or as was this movie, should I say. So, yeah, I wouldn't fall off my chair to hear a sequel in the works, but I'd be very surprised, because they left this film in a way where, I don't know, it almost felt like they want to do a sequel, but at the same time, I don't know if a sequel could work. The film left, at least for me, something to be desired. I didn't feel at the end of the film was particularly satisfying, and I did walk out the cinema feeling like it was a worthwhile watch. But as I've already mentioned, I also left the cinema feeling nonplussed, feeling perplexed by what I just saw. And I think part of that is because the end didn't really feel like the end to me. It felt like the beginning of the next part of the story, and I wish that it felt more conclusive. I wish we actually got to see these characters have a happy or sad ending, because I don't really feel you get to see that. It almost feels like something would happen with these characters the next day that the film's just not exploring. So yeah, it feels like it's almost like part 2 of a grander story, and we're not getting the full story. And the creative decisions. Listen, I usually love or like a good, odd, or unusual movie. One of my favourite films last year was Saltburn. Saltburn is an unusual film. It's a very strange film, and it's not for everybody, but I love that movie so much. And I wanted to have that same sort of feeling coming out of this movie as I did coming out of watching Saltburn at cinema. I even watched it at the same cinema. I was actually in the same cinema room that I watched Saltburn, and I was thinking, God, if I had that same feeling coming out of this, I'm just going to feel so fulfilled, you know what I mean? But I didn't have that. The film, in its creative decisions, I liked that it was trying to be unusual and everything, but the decisions felt too surreal, and I was sat there at the end when all these weird things had happened, to say the least, and I was like, that actually took me out of it more than it got me engaged. In the end, the strange and wacky elements at the end of the film. Either you go with them or you don't, and I personally didn't go with them. There were things about it which I really liked, and I liked the film overall. I didn't dislike it. It was as I keep saying, it was a worthwhile watch. I'm happy I saw it, but I wanted to love it. And I think it suffers more than anything because it's trying to be an A24 movie. This is an A24 production, and it feels almost like the producers from A24 Studios came into production and said, actually, we want to make the third act of the film more wacky and we want to make it more unusual. But I don't think the wacky and ambitious decisions made towards in the movie fit with the rest of the film. And one last thing, this film reminded me, the title of this film reminds me of the Elton John song Funeral for a Friend / Love Lies Bleeding. And the lyrics in the song, love lies bleeding in my hands. I mean, I can't sing to save my life, but the film reminded me of the lyrics from that song, and I thought the song was going to be used in this film, and it wasn't. And I thought it was an odd decision to name this film after the lyrics / title of an Elton John song, and quite a famous Elton John song at that. So I thought that was an odd decision, which I also found to be a bit perplexing. Like, why did he call the film Love Lies Bleeding if it's got no relation to the Elton John song whatsoever? I don't know. I was a little nonplussed by that decision as well. It's not bad. There are definitely things to like about it, but it wasn't as suspense driven as I wanted to be. It wasn't as emotionally engaging as I wanted to be. I actually found the film to be more emotionally distant than anything. I wasn't enthralled by it. I didn't find it that compelling, and I thought there were certain creative decisions made in the second half of the film that didn't really fit with the rest of the movie. It's not bad, but I kind of feel the same way about this as I felt about Saint Maud. It's an interesting film, but I wanted to love it, and I'm not sure if it was really for me. Still, I admired what Rose Glass was going for, and you know what? I'm looking forward to see what she does next, because this is completely different than Saint Maud, and it does feel like it's from the same director at the same time, so, you've got to admire that. And yeah, I liked what it was going for, I just didn't love it as a whole. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that Love Lies Bleeding, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. I thought this was a good film, which is why I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. I didn't think it was a solid movie, which is why I'm not giving it a 7.5 out of 10, but for what it is, it's a good watch. I just can't see myself ever returning to it because I didn't find it as entertaining as I wanted to either. I mentioned Thelma and Louise early on in this review, as I think I did. My head's all over the place because I've got hay fever right now. But anyway, I think I mentioned Thelma and Louise early on in this review. And the thing is about Thelma and Louise, that is a very entertaining film. It's suspenseful, and it's sometimes hard. Sometimes it's hard to watch in places. It is, but it's a brilliant made movie, one of Ridley Scott's best in my opinion. And I kind of wanted that from this. I kind of wanted a lower budget version of Thelma and Louise, and perhaps my expectations were getting the best of me. And again, I did like it, I want to reiterate, but I'm not really sure what it was trying to do. I think the third act was more, or less wacky should I say. I think it was more grounded. It would have been better, and I would have come out the cinema feeling more fulfilled, but it was what it was. A worthwhile watch that unfortunately left me more nonplussed than satisfied. And so, all in all, as I've already said, and as I'm going to say once more in this podcast today, Love Lies Bleeding is a 7 out of 10 for me. Anyway, guys, that's it for today's podcast. If you have seen Love Lies Bleeding, please let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. Maybe it's your favourite film of the year so far, or maybe you thought it was absolute pants. Whatever your thoughts are on Love Lies Bleeding, please let me know in the comment section below. And thank you as always for watching or listening to this podcast. And if you haven't yet, please don't... scratch that. Please don't forget that you can also check this podcast out audibly on Spotify at Night of the Movies on Spotify. And if you have been listening on Spotify, thank you to my Spotify listeners. You should also know that you can check out this podcast visually. Yes, you can watch this podcast on my YouTube channel at Night of the Movies on that platform as well. And whether you've been watching or listening to this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe, because if you enjoy the podcast, you get updated when I release new podcasts over the next couple of weeks to months on this channel. And as always, as what he said, thank you for watching or listening to this podcast. And I suppose this is it. So I will see you guys again soon. But bye for now. Bye.